Hey YouTube, welcome to UniXTCG for the first video on this channel for the 2024 year. And yeah, we're going to talk about today the great divide of the OP05 meta, because I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out exactly what deck to play. I know a lot of testers have already settled, and there are a lot of reasons for different deck choices, but we've had a lot of top cut things from locals, online events, even a few treasure cups, last minute regional as well, I believe. But at this point, we're going to talk about the factors that are going to go and make the most difference for which deck you should be taking to nationals and all of your important OP05 events up until the UTA structure deck comes out. So with that being said, if you haven't already, this will be a great time to like the video. Let's see if we can get over 100 likes. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and just keep an eye out for our other One Piece content. We're also going to be doing Dragon Ball Super Fusion World content as well. It's just going to be a good time. And if you want to really explore Universe X, go out on the link tree, check out the Twitch, check out the Dragon Ball channel, and we're gonna have a great time. So with that being said, let's hop into the video. So a lot of people by now already kind of have seen the big frame. While Sakazuki was the de facto leader in the Japanese meta, once we're at global, you're starting to see that there's a little bit of a difference. I would like to say that this is kind of a weird two-deck format with a bunch of other decks that can play but still have to go a little uphill to play against these other two decks. And when it comes to those two decks, I would say that the rulers of this current OP05 format are Sakazuki and Enel, for different reasons too, but the way they put the game at a particular point, particular ways that people need to play to fight against them, pretty much polarizes what decks can and cannot be used. So first, starting off with Sakazuki, for most of you guys that haven't heard or read a lot of the articles on my Patreon, which will be in the description as a link, we have a deck that sees the most options. You see an additional card per turn. You've got searchers who can recycle from your trash. So you have a deck that is able to go through an incredible amount of cards and see an incredible lot of options. The combination of cards that lower cost and then KO or bottom deck off cost pretty much allows you to go through and decimate your opponent's board. What it is lacking, because of all those options that don't have counters, is a lot of counter. The deck can fold very quickly to a bunch of wide attacks that are being sent its way, and when Rush gets thrown in there, it gets even worse, because Rush is going to be able to provide bodies that swing the turn they come down, then you have to deal with them, but more Rush could come out. Sakazuki's main defense is dealing with cards before they can swing, and Rush takes that out of the equation. So when it comes to Sakazuki, you have to play a deck that can either put out multiple threats at once via small cost and go wide with it, or multiple, maybe 3 to 4 cost cards, or that also cruises into an end game that can play big cards. Because once you get to the 10 drop area, you have to start playing a little differently as Sakazuki. You have to have your Ice Ages ready, Ice Ages plus Borsalinos if you want to play it, Ice Ages, Kuzans, your removal past that. But otherwise, you are looking at 10 drops being a little more sticky. But this runs a lot of decks out of the format. Now on the other end, you have Enel. Enel has an interesting effect that just allows you to recycle its last life once per opposing turn. And using this, you're going to see a lot of cards. Not as much as Sakazuki, but you're still going to be seeing a lot of cards, because you're healing with this deck, you're taking a damage, discarding the worst card in your hand, and regaining your last life in this deck. So you're actually seeing a lot of cards from your life pool coming into your hand. So the harder somebody tries to win, the more cards you're gonna see. And the best part about Enel is that you can go down to this last life and then start decisively blocking after they've allowed you to use your leader effect, so you've seen these extra cards. Pair that with triggers coming out of life, and you have a bunch of free bodies that can impact the board, and then add in your incredible late game, which Enel will never be blocked out of. You cannot stop Enel from hitting late game. So they will always be able to drop these 7 cost big mobs, these 8 drop Katakuris, these 9 cost Yamatos, and that's a huge thing. The issue with this, I don't want to say like it's terrible. Sometimes the meta just needs to be defined well, but these two decks don't get mised the same way. And what I mean by this is the things that work against Enel get decimated usually by Sakazuki, and the things that do work against Sakazuki don't really work against Enel. take a couple decks for instance, okay? I'm gonna put Sakazuki and Enel on the screen so you guys can see them, and we're gonna talk about certain decks that do or do not work. We're gonna start off with Purple Luffy. Purple Luffy tends to play a singular 5 cost per turn up to a 7 cost, sometimes even a 9 cost. And because of this, your main goal with the deck is to rush to these points of high dawn and then play these big bodies. Now, against Enel, when you play a body that's more than 8 cost, they can't deal with it. The only way they can get rid of it is by swinging over it. Yamato won't hit it, Gedatsu won't hit it, Katakuri only hits up to 8 drops. So when you play a 9-drop Kaido, they're not really getting rid of that easily. When you play a 7-drop Kid, they're only really going to get rid of that with an opposing Katakuri. And so when it comes to this, Purple Luffy is able to stack up a wall of blockers and then also start putting these big bodies on the board, and eventually you will grind Enel out because Enel will be able to defend you, and then once it runs out of hand, it can no longer defend that last life, and it gets replaced, it gets swung out again, and then you swing for game. So a deck like Purple Luffy is very much so able to contend with Enel. However, you want to take it to the flip side, and you are now at a point where you get to Sakazuki and you play a 5-drop against Sakazuki. Well, Sakazuki can remove that with no problem. You play a 7-drop against Sakazuki. That is literally an Ice Age and a Hound Blaze. That is a Kuzan swing, a leader swing, and a Hound Blaze. So you get into these points where this Purple Luffy deck could see 5 Enels in one day and know it's probably getting a top cut, or 5 Sakazukis in one day and know that you're probably not making it into extra pricing for being in the top half. It's really crazy like that. You want to run another deck that kind of does the opposite? Look at Zoro. Zoro has the 1-drop pressure where if even going first, you can line up 2 7-drop swings. But going second, you can line up a 6-7-7 or a 7-7-7 with the right setup, or a 6-6-7 with the worst setup. And you can then pressure Sakazuki's low counter hand, and then after they do resolve that first Rob Lucci and start blowing up your lobies, you can just start rushing through your rush cards, playing a rush card a turn, swing with your leader. If they deal with it, which they likely will, it's off. But if they don't deal with it, you've got another rush card to also go in for swinging next turn. It becomes a vicious cycle of pressure, and it can really, really crumble Sakazuki. And when you get to the end game where they have 0 life and then you're just waiting for the Diablo Jambe, or you're waiting for the Rush Luffy to put Dawn under and swing, that's really crazy. Now, against Enel though, they'll take that first couple damage straight to the hand, and then they'll really start working on playing, if you get an L4 trigger from life, that's something gone in your field. Gedatsu can come down if they play it, that's something gone from your field. Once they reach their end game, which could expend some of their hand, they'll be playing things like Yamato, which will, through combined life, smoke something off your board and then give them a life back. They'll be able to play Katakuri that can touch almost anything on your board. So against Enel, Zoro is facing an extremely uphill battle that doesn't exist against Sakazuki in that same way. Another deck that we can ping pong against is Law. Law still has a great matchup versus Yellow because Yellow doesn't do the best with interacting with the board. They can do a lot more now, but if Law wants to just defend itself and be a little passive and eventually build up its board and then start going off on shambles and swinging him, they will be able to get a lot of mileage off of starving Enel off its initial life gain, then going infinite pretty much on their resources. Whereas you pass the ball back to Sakazuki and Law has no chance, because essentially the Rob Lucci in the deck will start blowing apart your field, and recycling that Rob Lucci will make it even worse. So I think that's really the issue with this current format in terms of what deck do you play. Most decks are good against one, but not good against the other. And if you're playing Sakazuki or Enel, you then have to worry about the mirror match, which in both of them can be tricky in a lot of ways. Enel is a deck where in the mirror match, it can be incredibly slow, but you're both going to reach the end game. And so it's kind of a threat density thing. Turning something sideways can easily mean your opponent can turn their big bosses sideways and attempt to deal with it. You don't have a lot of removal for your opponent's board, because once they start playing the 9-drop Yamatos, those are sticking until you can swing over them, and usually Enel has a fair amount of combo power that works. So that's going to be a big issue. It's a lot of tit for tat. It's a slow game. On the drops, or the flip side, you have Sakazuki going against another Sakazuki deck, and those are some very, very, very intense matchups where a singular misplay, miscount, mismanagement of resources can set you down a spiral to bottoming out against your mirror. So both of these decks are, I believe, at the peak of the format, and other decks have to trail behind and best figure out where to go from that. Now, I do think, personally, I'm calling it now, Sakazuki is going to gain more and more popularity. Between the two decks, I do think Enel is the much easier one to run. And so at the beginning of the format, Sakazuki will have to find its legs. People will have to practice more with Sakazuki, because when you have more chances, when you have more opportunities, when you have more options, you have more opportunities to misplay, but you also have more opportunities to outplay your opponent. A lot of people can get pressured by this when they're playing, especially players that aren't used to that many options in hand, like the average One Piece player that hasn't played a lot of other card games. So I do think Sakazuki will take a surge in popularity moving forward, and I also think that if you're going to nationals, you have to understand how to play against Enel, but there's no real way to make yourself ready for Enel in most cases, because Enel's going to do what it's going to do every single game. It's going to make it incredibly hard to kill. It's going to make it so that you need to have multiple attacks lined up and they all need to connect. If Enel's at 1 life, you need a minimum of 3 clean shots to get through. And if they block one of them, oops, gotta wait till next turn. Break that last life and, hope they can't heal too much the next turn. So I do think at this point, you're best off making sure that your Sakazuki match is good, but making sure that you have the strategy to play against Enel. Because Enel isn't it so much as having the cards, as much as knowing that, okay, well, I need to have a board. I need to line up a kill shot and I need to be able to follow through on it. I need to have 5 swinging things on the turn if I can manage it. And if you play a turn where you play 2 5 costs or 5 costs and a 4 cost and you pass without swinging into life and they only have 1 life, they might heal the next turn, sure. But you can go through your next turn with the appropriate amount of swings to try to push that life or break their chain of their leader effect. Even other decks can tech a little bit against Enel. I think the best tech I've seen against Enel really is the inclusion of the 10-drop Kuzans in Sakazuki, because that's the way that you can turn on all of your removal against their in-game drops and turn their invincible in-game board into a very not so invincible setup where Lucci can come through and clear a 7-drop and then with a little help clear a 8-drop or a 9-drop. So these are a lot of things that can happen, but I do think going into nationals, your best bet is to be good, or try to be as favored as possible versus Sakazuki while knowing how to play Enel. That's just my take. Let me know what you think in the comments. I want to know how you guys feel about this format and if you guys like this current Dual King format and everything else under it. Let me know what you think. Like I said, if you like the video, like the video. We're gonna go into 2004 plus 20, very strong 2024. We're gonna go into that very strongly, and we got a lot of news lined up. Excited to say a couple things when I can. Excited to keep making content, and let's hop into this new year with a vengeance. I'm gonna just manifest that for myself, spread it to everybody. So I will see you guys in the next video. It's likely going to be Dragon Ball Super Fusion World related, and we'll keep it moving. Thanks, later. And here we are once again with another Patreon shout out session at the end of every video. Thank you for everybody that just does the extra little bit to help this channel go, help this brand grow. And on this Patreon channel, you can expect articles coming out every week. Holidays did get a little frantic, but yeah, we are putting those out for One Piece right now, soon to be Dragon Ball Super Fusion World as well. We're doing giveaways. I'm currently trying to hunt down another box of OP05 because they are hard to find in my area, but we're trying to get one of those up. And then I want to give a vocal shout out to the realm of Xers. That is the tippity of the toppities, the Burars, the Brycears, and the Big Daddy Flapjacks of the world. Thank you guys for being at the highest tier and giving the extra oomph to this channel. So I'll see you guys in the next video, and can't wait for it.